Hey, it's Glenn, and welcome back for another episode of the Books I Love. Um, this time I'm gonna do, and I don't even know, there are all these books floating around in my head that I wanted to talk about. And I have a list of books, I blocked out the year of the episodes of this series I wanted to do, and I'm just kind of that's one of the reasons it's taken me a while to record the second episode, because I wanted to do one book, but then I realized it's been literally 30 years since I read it, and I have to go look up some stuff, and that's been putting me off. And I'm like, well, there's so many books I love. I'll just talk about one of the ones that's on my mind presently that I don't have to look things up for, because I can just sit here and tell you why I love it. So let's do the autobiography of Frederick Douglass. I love this book. I love this book so much. I think I read it. I picked up a whole bunch of books at one point that I was trying to get out of my bubble of white privileged ignorance on race issues. I wanted to really see the black experience in America throughout history through the words of black people. And Frederick Douglass, that was one of the first ones I read. And oh my gosh, this book was eye-opening. And so again, in this series I'm not doing reviews so much as I'm just telling you my experience with the book and why I love this book. But spoilers, here and there, but I'm going to try not to tell you. I'm not going to tell you everything about this book. But it's a very short book, really. It's a relatively short book, which I appreciate. Gets to the point. But I guess it's, the life of Frederick Douglass is aspirational. It's this is a man telling a story about being born into horrific circumstances. The man was an American slave. And it's how he became so much more than that. How he got out of it, how he helped make people aware of the horrors of what he was living through in the mid-19th century. He became a powerful voice in the abolition movement in the North. But and I'll keep this brief. These videos aren't supposed to be very long. It's just me saying, I love this book, here's why, you should probably read it. But one of the things that I think struck me so much about this book was how it illustrated the power of knowledge. Because my favorite episode, I guess you would call it, in the life of Frederick Douglass that he writes about is, he talks about how it was forbidden to teach a slave how to read and write. And the wisdom of the time was, if slaves can read, they will read. And if slaves do read, slaves will figure out what they're missing in life. They will figure out everything that is being kept from them. They will feast their eyes upon the hidden treasures. And so, the mistress of the house, I don't remember the names of the slave owner family members, but the wife of the household kind of didn't get the memo. And she took it upon herself to teach their slave Frederick how to read and write. And maybe just on a whim, maybe just because she thought it would be fun. I don't remember. It's been a while since I read that book as well, but for whatever reason she taught him how to read and write. And lo and behold, the prophecy came true. You teach a slave to read and they find out what they're missing. Like suddenly, he was able to read. He was able to read notes and letters that his master was writing. Like he figured out everything that was going on around him. It's not like slaves were stupid. They were forced into a life of ignorance. They were deliberately kept in the dark. They were deliberately not educated. They were just there to work and serve. But once he could read, he became aware of the wider world. He became aware of places where slavery wasn't legal. Like he figured out what was going on in the world, and that he was in the worst possible place he could be. Manages to escape with his life. I mean, there's this great story. Gets to the north, starts telling his story, and this is a former slave who can not only tell his story, but he also has the gift of being able to be a public speaker. He can read and write. Like he's able to educate the people in the north with clarity about what he escaped and why. And yes, Frederick Douglass is one of my historical heroes. But I think, that's one of those gems that I took from it, is how important it is. How important it is to be able to read and write and communicate, to learn those things. Don't take it for granted that we're such a literate society here in the 21st century. It seems like everyone can read and write, but that's not really the truth. There are lots of places in the world where people can't read and write. For the majority of the population is illiterate, and it's much easier to take advantage of a population of people who cannot read and write. That's why the slaves were kept illiterate. They knew what would happen. They knew what they were holding back from all of the slaves in the South, the American South. And so, yeah, I loved it. Like, I love autobiographies in general because, I love getting an insight into someone's experience, like from first-person narrative. It's like, here is what it was like. It's like you read an autobiography from the mid-1800s, and it's like you're sitting at the feet of this person who by our time is long gone, but there he is telling you in his own words what his life was like and what the trials he had to go through and overcome were, and how he did it and why he did it. And just, he gets it's like he's on both sides of that experience in that time. He lived as a slave. He lived in ignorance, and then he escaped and lived in the North and was wearing suits and ties and doing public speaking and writing his autobiography. Like, he had this incredible life story, like this incredible experience. And because I read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, I got to hear all about it from Frederick Douglass himself, separated by centuries, connected by the written word. And so that, I think, that is something that really, that is why I love the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, because it's not just the story of this historical hero who I greatly admire, but it's also a story illustrated by its very existence. It's a story about the power of the written word. So that's it. I told you, these videos don't need to be very long in order to tell you why I love this book. I highly recommend reading this book. It won't take you very long. It's not a terribly long book. But I mean, there's so much to be gained from it. So I hope you'll check it out and read it. I also hope you'll check out and read my books. If you go to my author website, glensladeclarkjr.com, there's, the whole library of stuff I wrote, which is something, I can appreciate that I was taught to read and write from a very early age. I didn't have to fight for that. So, yeah, if you can read and write, don't take that for granted. There's power there. But yeah, so check out my author website, like, subscribe, all the things, if you are so kind and so inclined, and I will talk to y'all next time.